Alright, I teased it a lot over the last year, but yeah, I'm not only an artist in the traditional sense, but I also make digital things like animation. Hi, welcome to my second channel where I talk about things I do in my free time. Just kidding, I don't have free time. And in today's video, I'm going to break down how I made a professional anime commercial within a month by myself, while also having a 9 to 5. I've been commissioned to make this whole ass commercial anime spot for a biker fashion brand, and there's a big story behind the scenes and a couple of things I didn't have the chance to tell you guys. Like I said, I wanted my main channel to stay focused on tutorials and tips, so this is why I wanted to tell you guys the whole story and how I did all of this. DrawlikeaSir, let's go. Okay, so here's the full story. You've probably been asking yourself, why have you been so lazy and didn't upload anything throughout the summer last year? Do you really think I've just been idle for 2 months, keeping my feet up? Come on, you guys know me. I was actually approached to create an anime commercial for a fashion brand called Left Lane, founded by a fellow German YouTuber. I had never heard of that brand before, but that makes sense because I have as much connection to biker fashion as I do with the outside world. It was supposed to look just like the trailers that I animated for my manga series back then, which you can buy on my website, just saying. I was so close to turning down the job because, as you might know, those trailers back then took me several months, and the deadline for this trailer was not even 2 months. It was more like 1.5, so I was this close to declining the job, especially since I was also attending conventions during that time. Yeah, I'm so glad you couldn't see my face at the time. I had the biggest bags under my non-existent eyes. I haven't animated anything in 3 years now. Sure, I've taken on a couple of smaller projects, but a really big project like this sounded very exciting to me. So I said, screw it, I can sleep when I retire. I'll take the job. How bad could it be, right? I think the most important thing when you have a client who isn't familiar with art or animation work is to fill them in about what can be done within the time frame and what can't. So you're not just an artist, animator or video editor, but you're also somewhat of an advisor for your client. Your job is to take the client's idea and turn it into a vision that can be animated in time. So originally the idea was to make a short episode that lasts like 5 minutes with characters having superpowers and fighting on bikes and each character having a backstory and stuff. And it's always such a Dragon Ball beam struggle between the client's idea and the reality of what is actually feasible in terms of time. I found a nice middle ground where I kept the story somewhat realistic, but I still included explosions and characters flying off skyscrapers, etc. So my idea was to plan and scribble a few storyboards so the client could have a rough idea of what we're going for. In this case, I even made a quick test animation to show how we could place the clothing or merchandise in the finished spot. I also created a mood board to show the quality of the end product and the direction we're heading, along with a storyboard to explain what happens within the commercial. I also insisted on clarifying which character would wear which outfit and if the designs fit, because I couldn't change anything afterwards. Communication was key here because we needed to be absolutely sure we're on the same page before I started anything. And this workflow applies to everything. Even if you, for example, take on commission as an artist, you should never just be like, ah yes, understood, I'll just finish it right away, I'll start right now. Because worst case, the client might have envisioned something else, and that's bad enough for an artwork, but for such an enormous production, that's even worse. Only after getting approval for everything did I really start production. And then I started production. After 2 conventions, a workshop, and over 70 drawings I've made at my convention booth. I've really enjoyed meeting you guys in person. It was such a blast. Okay, here was my method to save time so I could manage this within the time frame. I wasn't drawing any backgrounds. I've replaced as much as I can with 3D models. Over the past few years, I've been experimenting and practicing with 3D, and now was the moment to show what I've learned. Shout out to my friends York and Ihabo, my fellow animator buddies. They also inspired me to completely make the backgrounds in 3D. Now, if I save myself the trouble of drawing backgrounds for 15 scenes each, I could actually get this whole thing done on the day of the deadline. So yeah, Blender really saved my ass here, it's pure magic. At some point I even did the whole compositing thing in Blender, so I just placed the drawn characters directly in Blender, because that way I didn't have to recolor the characters with reddish tones and stuff. If you set a light in Blender, it automatically colors everything. Absolutely crazy. Of course, the backgrounds didn't stay like that. I then hand painted and edited everything to make the backgrounds look more like actual anime. And not gonna lie, just drawing the vanishing point lines for every single window and details of the buildings would have taken days. Now, I could have also animated all the effects in 3D, but honestly, I just don't think that looks all that good. Sorry. When I look at Ufotable or Mapper, some effects are just CG and 3D generated smoke and fire. So instead, I just drew the line there. Even effects like explosions are actually hand drawn, and even the light, etc. is all hand painted into the streetlights. Now, what changed the least were the actual drawings. These hand-drawn animations were created exactly like the ones in the trailer for my manga back then. Almost nothing has changed for me. Clip Studio just goated. I swear I'm not sponsored by anyone in this video, but I explained in every stream where I was working on this that I do not regret the switch from Photoshop to Clip Studio. I really like this app and it helped out a ton. Now, I could also talk about the tablets I use, but I think I'll spare you that. I'll just link all of the apps and tablets, etc. as usual here on my website in my art supply list. So I'll stop advertising the stuff, but I'm not sponsored. What do you want from me? My god. Okay, now, my favorite shots from the trailer were these three here. I just love drawing effects, so the old dude definitely had to die in a big explosion, so it was also a great opportunity to draw a couple of cool impact frames again. And maybe you already saw it earlier when you looked at my storyboards. This shot with the evil biker gang has become very abstract in terms of color because I watched a lot of One Piece at that time. One Piece currently has one of the best art directions I've seen in a very long time. They often switch between different moods and color schemes, so I eventually thought, let's just try that as well. It doesn't really have to make sense that the city and the sky suddenly turn blood red, but just pay attention to the visuals here. The antagonist has a warmer design and a red bike and red clothing, while the protagonist gets a cooler vibe. And I think this effect definitely works out, so you could see the cooler scenes with the cool character and the warmer scene with the reddish character, and it works so well that you don't even get to stop and ask yourself, why is this guy red though? Now, I was so scared about doing this scene here because it really looked very challenging, but in hindsight, it was definitely doable. Once you've got this motion down, the drawings are really not all that detailed, so it was actually quite easy. Animating the explosion, for example, was a lot more work than this. I actually had so many more ideas that I would have loved to include, like the infamous Akira bites-like meme. I was so determined to sneak it in, but it just didn't fit into my schedule anymore. You had it at the beginning, but it was actually planned for the characters to talk, but then also animating lip flaps while action is happening, yeah, no shot. So I thought the entire trailer could maybe be voiced by a narrator instead. I just wrote a simple text for the narrator, something that sounds vague and mysterious. I just tried to time it a bit so it doesn't distract from the trailer itself, but complements it instead. And man, this narrator sounds so good.
人類の誕生以来、人々は互いに競争してきた。
Call me crazy, but I think he kinda sounds like Aizen from Bleach.
私の霊圧で自戒しろ。ようこそ。
But yeah, after I had the voiceover, I could get everything done. I can now confidently say that this is the best animation that I've made so far. Emphasis on being so far because, well, I'm not gonna spoil anything yet. Obviously, you always ask yourself and wonder afterwards, how much more could I have done if I had more time? But I can also say that I'm extremely happy I finished it in time, like, at all. Safe to say, I'm happy I finally had the chance to tell you guys the story, and I also have a couple of more stories to tell, like the time Amazon wanted me to paint a whole tower PC for them, or the other time where I had to paint an oil painting for one of Germany's biggest paint manufacturers. You know what I'm about to say, right? You should definitely subscribe if you want YouTube to notify you when these videos drop. Also, liking this video would be pretty nice. All of this is just a test for now though, because I'm not quite sure how this channel is gonna perform, so guess we'll just see. Goodbye.